one of the positive pieces of fallout from Twins Fest weekend was that Corey Koskie will be inducted into the team's Hall of Fame. It's a very vast and well-represented Hall of Fame, but we still think there are some guys who might deserve a spot. So we're going to look at mine for this edition of Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE. Find me over on the Skeets on Blue Sky at warren.bsky.social. We are very much appreciative of you making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And of course, as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day, joined as I am pretty much always by Mr. Dave Brown at Answer Dave Brown on the tweets, Answer Dave on the Skeets. What up?
I'm pretty vast and replete myself, not unlike the Twins Hall of Fame. So I'm interested in this conversation, though. I don't know as much about the Twins Hall of Fame as maybe other people, but I'm willing to learn.
I got to vote for it one year, which was actually kind of cool. It would have been the 20. So it's cool and it's not, because it was the 2013-14 off season, and the player we inducted ended up not actually going in because he got into trouble with the law, and the Twins said, all right, screw this. And he has not been revisited either, and I don't think he will be. Do you have any idea who I'm talking about?
Isn't that Knobloch?
Chuck Knobloch. Yep. So
Chuck Knobloch. That's
Chuck Knobloch. And I mean,
what did he do?
He's had some assault stuff in his past, and I think he had a weird kind of bizarre thing where he was being really creepy to some women on a train in New York or something too. All told, it was a very poor reflection of him at a time when he couldn't afford to have one. But so we're going to talk about in this episode
it's going to be locked up Twins, not locked up.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I think that's more of a Minnesota Vikings thing. But we'll talk about a player who I think was very underrated. We'll talk about a player who a lot of fans remember dearly and remember so dearly. And then the last thing I have, it's a kind of a unique idea that I'm stealing from professional wrestling. So I hope that piques everyone's interest. But before we get started, Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel, the FanDuel Sportsbook, because new customers can bet the $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Just download that app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Now, coming out of the shoot here, the highest Fangraphs WAR on offense, I guess. I didn't cross-reference with the pitchers, but I'm sure it's close, if not outright. 4.9 Fangraphs WAR in 143 games that year, 18 homers, 13 stolen bases, hit a 310, 363, 529 slash. That's a 140 weighted runs created plus, which is 21 points higher than Kirby Puckett. Would you believe that Shane Mack was the most valuable Twin in 1991?
I would believe that, actually. I remember Shane Mack fondly from fantasy baseball times and baseball cards and just that kind of thing. You know, he's a prospect with the Padres. Didn't quite make it.
Rule 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Was he?
I think they Rule 5'd him over, and he was a Team USA guy too. Like, he's got a fun backstory.
Not
and
that card, the 84. He was on the 84. Was it the 84 or 88?
No, 84 sounds right, because 88 he would have been 25, I think, already. So
I can kind of picture it in my mind. Yeah, I've got that card.
Yep, I actually can too.
Anyway, I don't know. There was just something about he was just he had a good vibe, and I enjoyed him thoroughly. And he that was a guy that Kirby Puckett was kind of gregarious, and there were other Twins who were more famous, but Mac was just a dude who could hit. He could get on base, and I mean he played left field mostly, right? And I think he was pretty good in the outfield as well, and just an underrated player and
Yes.
very good. It is. There are a lot of people in the Twins Hall of Fame. I'm not 100% sure why he isn't in yet, but we could say that about a few people.
Well, and yeah, let's look at this list just real quickly. I'm going to read it in reverse order, but Corey Koskie will be this year. Rick Stelmazik and Terry Ryan in 24, Joe Mauer by himself in 23, Cesar Tovar, Dan Gladden, and Ron Gardenhire in 22, Justin Morneau in 2020, Joe Nathan and Jerry Bell in 2019, Johan Santana in 18, Andy McPhail and Michael Kadire in 17, Torrey Hunter and John Gordon in 2016, legendary team PR man Tom, me, and Eddie Guardado in 2013, Camilo Pascual in 2012, Jim Perry in 2011, Greg Gagne in 2010, George Brophy in 2009. I believe he's the scout who signed Kirby Puckett. Brad Radke also in 2009. Rick Aguilera in 2008. Jim Rance, legendary scouting director who has since passed away. Gary Gaetti also in 2007. Zoyo Versailles in 2006. The original Cheap Polad, Carl Polad in 2005. Frank Viola also in 2005. Earl Batty in 04. Bob Casey, Bob Allison in 03. Bert and Tom Kelly in 02. Jim Cott and
that guy. Circle Bert.
Right. Oh, I got to stand next to him at the Twins Fest Live. It was nice to see him again. Jim Cott and Herb Cardinal in 01. Calvin Griffith, you could pretty much undo that one if you ask me.
Yeah.
He was part of the inaugural class with Harmon Killebrew, Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, Kent Herbeck, Kirby Puckett, and again, Calvin Griffith. So a huge list. I mean, it's 5 by 8. Is that so 40? Is that, if my math is right, there's been 40, meaning Corey Koskie will be 41. Corey Koskie, certainly a deserving inductee, and we've talked about this a little bit in our most recent show. But you look at Shane Mack, and a lot of different itches get scratched with these guys. You've got legendary front office members like Andy McPhail, Terry Ryan, broadcasters. You've got Herb Carneal, John Gordon. I'm certain Corey Provis someday. Dan Gladden, obviously, and as a player, but he's been broadcasting for a very long time. And then you've got even like guys who maybe weren't all that great, but were linchpins of important teams. I think, and I might get raked over the coals for this, but I think Dan Gladden is one of the most overrated Twins of all time. And
oh my goodness.
And so he scored the winning run in the 91 World Series. Well, does Gene Larkin deserve induction for being the man who hit that ball? And if you want to say yes, I'm not going to argue with that. This is a fan thing. I'm a big Hall of Fame guy when it comes to like MLB. So if you want to be a big Twins Hall guy, especially when it's a team related thing, no issues there. But I really struggle with Dan Gladden over Shane Mack. I mean, Shane Mack is, for my money, the most underrated player in Twins history, and he should 100% be on this page that I'm looking at on MLB.com/Twins, Matthew Leach's new stomping grounds. So
it's funny to me to talk about a player who is underrated for a team like Shane Mack. Usually it's like a kind of a national thing. Like this player doesn't get enough respect, for all-star games or whatever when it comes to mentions and so forth. But it's funny to me. It's not like there's another team in town. I mean, no offense to the Saints, but Shane Mack's right there for you. Hey, Brandon, do you remember? I'm just looking at his career, and he's had a couple gap years where he didn't play for one reason or another. The 94 strike happens, and he has one of his better seasons, really, at least in over 81 games. Doesn't play in 95. I remember there was a lockout. And 96 did not make it to the majors, comes back to the Red Sox in 97, no longer with the Twins. What were do you remember the circumstances by which he stopped playing, other than the fact that there was the lockout?
So it was actually something that I wondered myself. As a kid, the strike was pretty complicating. I was 8 years old or complicated. So it's hard for me to kind of understand really what all was going on. And then when Shane Mack didn't come back and, I knew that he had gone to Japan, it was kind of like, oh, okay. But then I got older and, started understanding the statistics more. And I'm like, holy smokes, he left at the top of his game. He would have been 31, 30-ish years old.
Yeah.
What the heck happened? And so what I have gleaned indirectly through my discussions with people like Greg Olson, who I used to host a podcast with, was that players who were free agents in that 93 or 94, 95 off season, a lot of them signed minor league deals because they at least would get to keep playing baseball when the season started again. They would have some stability. There was so much they didn't know that having some contract was better than having no contract. Now, the next step up from that, I assume, would be getting a deal in Japan for, I don't know how the money scaled back then. I think it's certainly not the same now, but it was probably a little closer back then. I can't say for sure, but I think he got a multi-year deal, and maybe the writing should have been on the wall that, this labor thing is not good if a player as good as Shane Mack is signing in Japan and looking likely to stay. And so it really he kind of bamboozled me. Like, why would such a good player dip like that? But then because I've had conversations with Greg about this, the 1995 Buffalo team, Cleveland's AAA. Right. And I think you were here for that conversation too, when I brought it up again. That was because a lot of those guys didn't know if they would have big league deals waiting for them when things opened back up, which was going to be super fast. They had the replacement players in camp, and that was a colossal joke. And I think Jeff Fletcher of the Orange County Register wrote a really good story about that back then that he recently shared again. I'll have to share it with you. But nevertheless, I think that was just kind of, he fell out of the league in a very weird way, and he came back, and it wasn't like he didn't look like he had missed that many years when you consider he was already in his mid 30s when he came back, and he kind of hit the ground running, but he was done after that. Good all around career. And I don't know what the Twins relationship is like with players from that era. Players that we've forgotten about, we always heard about Kirby Puckett because he was the best player and Hall of Famer, and Herbeck was from here. But I feel like we never hear about anymore. Tom Bernansky was a hitting coach, but he's not regarded as much of a legend. He could be a guy who would deserve a longer look as well. So we just had a really weird pattern to picking our heroes around here, and I think Shane Mack deserves much more inclusion than he's gotten.
Yeah, Mack, just 2 or 3 amazing, especially 2, 91 and 92 prime Shane Mack, and that'd be a good Twitter handle.
Prime Shane Mack. Yeah.
Yes. 5 WAR and 6.5 in 1992. A 6.5 WAR player. I mean, that's MVP. Really
insane.
That's nuts. That's just that's just crazy. He was just you wonder why it took him a little while to get going in his career, but when he did with the Twins, it was just it was magic. And they don't. I'm fairly certain they don't win in 91 without a 5 WAR player like Shane Mack. So
yeah, I think we've missed the boat with him being as pivotal as he was. I think that Kirby Puckett's shadow is a little too big for Shane Mack in that respect. Yeah, let's take our break. When we come back, we have a player a lot of people are going to have fond memories of. And then, in the final one, I have kind of a unique concept here. So we'll see what people think of it. But again, first, a quick word. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, you silly degenerate you, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from the kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature, by the way, lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field throughout the game, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Sign me up right now. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right. So, Dave, the second guy on my list, and I think it's more just a matter of time than anything else, is Brian Dozier. And one of the more remarkable player development stories I can remember. He goes from senior sign out of Southern Miss, something like $8,000 signing bonus or whatever, and hits for no power in the minor leagues, really, middling power, and is a shortstop primarily, becomes a power hitting, big time pull heavy second baseman, and his candle burns hot for 4 or 5 years, and then as quickly as he came around, he's gone. He goes to the Nationals and wins with them, but that's pretty much it for him. Ends with a whimper, not with a bang. But the guy got a ring. He got a decent little bridge contract. It was a nice little career for Brian Dozier, and there's zero doubt in my mind, though. Even if he hadn't been like one of the only redeemable, one of the only redeemable players or like things worth watching in his era,
right.
Spanning that era, just his level of play in a vacuum to me dictates Twins Hall of Famer.
He had a couple of seasons. We were talking about the great underrated seasons of Shane Mack. I wouldn't necessarily say that Dozier's underrated as far as Twins go. I feel like he's properly rated or whatever, but still, he had in 2014 5.5 WAR with that team, 5.8 WAR in 16, and 2017 4.7. These are amazing seasons. He only made one All-Star team. I don't know if that's and there are lots of reasons why guys make All-Star teams. So I don't.
Well, and that was one they had to campaign for. It was like no bull, vote Dozier.
Right. I remember.
So, I mean, they had to campaign pretty heavily for that. And again, it speaks to the fact that the Twins were still really like the post All-Star at Target Field hangover. The team stunk, and he came up as a shortstop and stunk. And actually, he credits Tom Bernansky with fixing his swing. And you go back, I wrote a story about it, but like the numbers line up with like, hey, we were in Detroit in, I think it was like late April or early May. And he said, we started counting clicks on my swing and trying to figure out how I got to certain spots as part of my swing. And before long, he's pulling balls and depositing them into the left field stands at a rate that we hadn't seen in many, many years. And so, yeah, kind of a cool little story there. Tom Bernansky, who didn't hang around long as a hitting coach, but he had one very prized pupil in Brian Dozier.
Brian Dozier, born May 15th, 1987. Does that mean he's 37 now?
Yeah, he's a year younger than me.
Right. So, I mean, that's getting old, but he could still be playing. Yeah, he didn't play. Yeah, COVID pretty much ended, and he wasn't. His last couple seasons weren't that good, but he was pretty good with the Nationals in 2019 when they won the World Series. So he had that going for him. He did win one Gold Glove. He had some pretty good. Some of his WAR value must have been on defense.
Yeah, he was a good second baseman. Paul Molitor was kind of who got the credit for that. Turning
good job for the Twins that their old legends are still contributing.
I mean, it's a crazy player development story from top to bottom. If you go into his minor league stuff and I have it up on Fangraphs. Like his season high for home runs at any level was 9. And he hit, I'm sure there were months he hit 9 home runs in the major leagues. He hit 42 in 1 year. But 2009, 0 home runs in 58 games. 2010, 5 home runs in 132 games. 11, 2 home runs in 49 games. 9 home runs in 127 games. 2012, it looks as though a couple homers in 48 games, and then he spent the lion's share of the time with the Twins, playing a shaky brand of shortstop, but figured it out after that. I mean, league average hitter in 2013 at age 26, and by age 30, he's hitting 30 homers a year and, in position to play in all-star games. Again, it smacks of, the rest of the team he played with stunk, but I think he's deserving on his own merits. And, he hasn't played since 2020. So if there's any sort of like year, I would guess next year might be the first year he appears on the ballot if he hasn't already. And since I don't have a ballot anymore, I've only had one. I couldn't say for sure if he was on this year's ballot, but I think he's probably close to getting onto the ballot, and I would definitely vote for him if I had the chance.
What can you tell us about how the process is with that? I don't know about maybe getting on a ballot. What do you know about that? What was voting like? You seem to have ambivalent feelings about it.
So it actually was the year that I covered for 1500 ESPN, and I got a kind of a nice little envelope. It was, I think it was mostly like one of those manila, but like white colored. I always think of manila as like the orange ones with like a Twins logo and everything. And it said, "Congratulations, you have a ballot. You can select as many or as few as you want." And then it's signed by the 3, sages of Twins Hall of Fame. I think it was like Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, and I think Harmon Killebrew had passed already, so it wasn't him, but it was like, the old guys who are the ones that make the phone call to tell you made it, right? And then you just postmark it and send it back. And it was, as I recall, it was pretty much just a ballot, nothing crazy fancy. Again, this is now going on 12 years ago, so memory's a little hazy from back then. But I think I'm mostly meh about it, in that the one vote I had was for Chuck Knobloch, and they decided he was a bad enough dude that they're like, nah, we're not going to do this. So, I mean, I just kind of left the taste in my mouth of like, not that he didn't deserve to have that taken from him, just that, I don't know.
Then I had disappointed that maybe he put himself in position to make his vote no.
And then at the end of the year, I had been let go from 1500, and so I had some bitterness there as far as like, I thought I had done everything I needed to do. Then the next year was All-Star year, and so like I had covered the crap out of a really bad 2013 team, and then 2014 I was persona non grata. I would have been able to cover the All-Star game if I had been with 1500 still, and I would have been able to do this instead of buying tickets and doing the fan thing, which I'm not complaining about, but it just was a frustrating year to have a gap year in Twins coverage. And so I think I'm mostly ambivalent about the idea that like 2014 was a pretty difficult year for me professionally.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this is all kind of tinged with.
It's just funny how our personal things do get caught up in our baseball memories, and we identify with things based on what happened to us that year.
Well, and as a creative type, I have found that I'm not unlike other creative types. I'm extremely petty. And when your creativity is your calling card, if someone else messes with that, that's where bitterness comes into play. And as I've learned more about like really, truly brilliant creative types, I've noticed that they're petty too. Like if they feel like they've been slighted, they do not say, "Oh, that's okay." They fight for what they believe. And so that's kind of why I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to stay bitter, but I'm definitely going to stand on business and say, I think this was wrong, And so if I get branded as petty for that, that's fine. But that's probably what's coming across here.
Brandon Petty.
Yeah, exactly. Unlike Chase Petty, former Twins prospect, who is a top 100 guy now because of a great trade, Falvey. But other than a non sequitur, Dave, how familiar are you with the WWE Hall of Fame?
I I don't know.
You're about to find out, I guess, right?
Yeah, sure. Is
So the concept.
Harley Race in it?
Why do you have to bring race into everything? No, Harley. I'm sure. Yeah. If not, he's in WWE through WCW, all that stuff.
It's a
Yes,
matter
of
of time,
course.
if nothing else.
Anyway, they do this thing where they also induct stables and groups and different things. So, like theoretically, the Twins.
The NWO, right?
Right.
Is that what you mean?
You got the NWO, or you've got just a recent example, you could induct the Shield. All guys who have split up, have done great things on their own. You could induct them individually. You could induct them as a group. But what I'm thinking is like, Nick, is it this year that would be 35 years since 91? Because you add the one for the year that you're playing.
Oh boy, this is
so
like,
if you
have we batted around yet?
So if you wanted to induct World Series winning teams, like I think that's a good idea, and that's a good way to get a nod for a guy like.
Dude, Brandon, hang on a second. Yeah, why don't they do that?
Right. So like
why aren't the 87 Twins and the 91 Twins in the what?
Right.
Other teams do that?
Right. So the 87 Twins, that's a nice little nod for Les Straker, who won, 8 games that year, but he's not going to ever make the Twins Hall of Fame. And so I think you might be getting what I'm getting at, but also not.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm leaning more on the idea of stables from wrestling. I want to induct
horses.
Yes, like the Four Horsemen. We're mixing our metaphors like crazy here.
All right, we'll get to your point finally.
The Soul Patrol outfield, I would like to see inducted. And so the Soul Patrol outfield originally was Jock Jones,
right,
Torrey Hunter,
right,
and Matt Lawton.
Right.
And it started in like 2000, I think, because they traded Lawton in 2001 for Rick Reed. And so there was a Soul Patrol and then like a Soul Patrol 2.0 where Shannon Stewart kind of stepped in.
Yeah.
And they traded Bobby Kelty for him. And Bobby Kelty, if you tried to put Bobby Kelty in the Soul Patrol, I don't know, man. That's there's something to be said about keeping up with appearances, and that probably would not have worked. But I think that would be a fun way to a fun nod to the outfields of the time. And like Shannon Stewart, very good player for the Twins, but no real stake to Hall of Fame spot. So I think
the Piranhas.
Yeah, the Piranhas. You could do. I mean, the M&M Boys is probably a little too obvious, but and that was always so contrived anyway. I kind of hated that nickname. But yeah, the Piranhas or the Bomba Squad. I mean, maybe Eddie Rosario makes it on his own, but he definitely makes it if you induct the Bomba Squad. So I don't know. That's where I
like this idea. Now I didn't quite get all the way to your. I mean, even though you were dropping good hints, I didn't quite get to what you were getting to. But isn't it odd? What's the do you know? Is there a reason why they don't do something like the 91 Twins? Shouldn't that happen?
Maybe that's what's going to happen once they start really running low on candidates. Because, let's be honest, the last good candidates, Joe Mauer hadn't retired that far before. Cesar Tovar was probably a pretty late induction. But we're getting to the point now where, they had a lull of not great players or not a ton of great players in the early Dozier era. They're going to have to get creative to not have too many gaps. I mean,
because it's going to be like 17 years before Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez are in the Twins Hall of Fame. Knock on wood.
Or Derek Falvey for making great trades.
Great call.
So I mean, honestly, I think you start inducting. This isn't like you're retiring numbers where you're making any sort of proclamation like nobody will ever wear this number again or anything. I don't know. I think it'd be fun to do Soul Patrol. Oh, the Piranhas. Oh, the Bomba Squad. I'm trying to think of who else.
That 160, the game 163 or 2 or whatever it was, right? Whoever that
the Fun Bunch. No, that we're not going to do that one. That was the rookies when Joe Mauer had his concussion in 2011 when they were dreadful, and they had all the rookies come up. That was the fun bunch. And it was because they insisted that the players were maybe more interested in putting on skinny jeans and picking up chicks than actually being good at baseball. And so they got called the fun bunch.
Right. Well, we can't say that they're running out of two players too soon, because I think we're supposed to do another show like this tomorrow where I talk about 3 more names.
And we workshop those. I'm not going to steal your thunder because I don't want you to do that to me either. And with that said, though, like, your list is fun and includes, I think I kind of stole Shane Mack from you, but then I kind of gave you some help on yours. So it should be a fun episode, and I hope people are excited about it.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a World Series type hero in yours, and I'm not going to give it away, but that I think has been a little underappreciated. And there's a fun Patrick Royce anecdote about him that I will definitely share when you bring him up. But
the kind of player that makes you go, well, why isn't he in there already?
Yeah.
So.
Well, I have a VHS of him playing right field against the Twins a year later. So that's also kind of fun. And I don't think that spoils it too much.
Did you shoot it yourself on a handy cam?
Little Zapruder footage, but back in playing right instead of back into the left. Anyway, that's a wrap. That's been this edition of Locked On Twins. We appreciate you joining us, hanging out with us. And those are the 3 additions I would like to see on the Twins Hall of Fame. Tune in Friday for Mr. Dave Brown's as well. But until then, he's Dave Brown. I'm Brandon Warren, saying we'll catch you on the other side, and we'll see ya
tomorrow
night.
Lexi!
Loose cannon.